In the last video, we stopped just short of understanding our very first line of code. Let's take a look at that line again. We talked earlier about syntax being a set of rules in a programming language. The first rule we're going to learn is that Swift has a set of reserved keywords. These keywords mean very specific things to the computer, so we use them in very specific cases. The first word in our line of code, var, is a Swift keyword. Var is short for variable. The keyword var indicates that we want to create a variable. What is a variable, though? Well, it's a construct to hold on to some piece of information. But don't worry, we'll get to that in a second. Immediately following var is another word, str, which over here is short for string. The word that follows var is always the name of the variable. So here, we're creating a variable using the keyword var and then naming it str. Programming has a lot to do with information, storing it, retrieving it, and manipulating it. Information is a long word, however, and programmers call it data instead. Like I said a second ago, a variable is simply a way of holding on to data. So why do we need to name this way to hold on to data? Outside of computers, we as humans use words to refer to the data around us. When you see a tree as a child, you assign this object a name. You call it tree, or whatever that word is in your language. You don't actually pick that tree out of the ground and put it in your head, but you assign this visual data, this image of a tree that you see in front of you, a name using a word. You know what a tree looks like, and if you want to tell someone else about it, you use the name that you have given to this object. In programming, we follow much the same concept. Our brains are simply super powerful computers. So here we have a variable, and we've given it a name, and after str, we have an equal sign followed by the text hello playground within double quotes. Now the double quotes are the quotation marks that you see at either end of the word. In programming, we call these double quotes. This text within the double quotes is called a string, and this is the data that we want to store in our variable. For now, let's just look at it as a word. Very soon, we'll talk more about what a string actually is. The equal sign here is called the assignment operator. An assignment operator takes the value on its right-hand side and assigns it to the variable on its left-hand side. So our variable, we're using the name str, refers to this data, hello playground. The equal sign and the string together indicates to the computer that we want to store the string inside the variable. So again, what does this mean? Think of a variable as a glass box with a name. You can put data into this box. Now the data can be many different types, and here we just put some text or a string in our box. Anytime we need to use that string, we can simply use the name of the box. When we talk about a tree to someone, we're pulling up some information stored in our memory, but we don't draw the tree or transfer the image in our head to the other person. Instead, we can use the name, the word tree, to refer to that data. Here, the word tree can be thought of as this box that contains an image of the tree, and we use the word tree to actually refer to that image. Similarly, when we use data in a computer, when we assign something to a variable, it's actually being stored in the computer's memory. The variable, which serves as an easy way to refer to that information for us, is also referenced to the place in a computer's memory where this data is stored. Let's look at an example. In the one line of code we have here, we put the text hello playground into the variable str. Putting information or data in a variable like this is called assigning. Remember that. And in this example, a programmer would say we assigned the string hello playground to the variable str. What if we wanted to use the same string somewhere else? Now, I could type it out again. So I could say hello, comma, playground on the next line. But because we've stored it in a variable named str, we can simply use the name str. We'll write it out. And on the right, we'll see the same text again. This panel on the right is called the results area, and it shows us the results of the instructions that we write out in the text editor over here. Even though we typed out str, we see that the result of typing it out is hello playground. Why is this? Well, remember when I said think of a variable as a glass box? The reason I specifically said a glass box is because a variable is what is inside of it. So str here is just a name. What it actually is this text hello playground, much like the word tree means an actual tree in real life. Rather than having to type out hello playground over and over again, we can now use str to mean the same thing as many times as we want. Now, why, you may ask, is it called a variable? In English, a variable means something that can change. The usage of variable here is from a mathematics tradition where a variable meant a symbol that contained a value. Since str is a variable and variables can change, that must mean we can change str, correct? Well, that's right. So let's try that out. Type along with me. So first we'll say str equal, which is the assignment operator, and then inside of double quotes, so first open up a double quote, then we'll type hello, comma, world, exclamation point, and then another double quote to close it. So since str is just a name, and in our analogy, it's a name to a glass box, we just reach into our box, we're pulling out hello playground that was in the box, and we're putting in hello world. So you'll see here that str on this line evaluates to hello playground, and when we type it out again, it's the same thing. But now that we've changed it, now that we've put something else into this box, it says hello world. And if we type out str again, now it should say hello world. It will continue to say hello world as many times as we type it until we change it again. Okay, let's create another variable. When we create a new variable, we say we are declaring a variable. Repeat after me, declaring a variable. Declaring a variable means creating an entirely new one, giving it a name, and assigning some data to it. So what's the process to declare a variable? Well, we start with the keyword var, then we give it a name. So we'll call this number. You can give any name. So, I could say Pasan, my name, but we want these things to be descriptive. So we'll say var number equal 10. Remember how we said you can put data in a variable? As you can see here, a variable isn't restricted to just a string or text. We can assign a number to the variable as well. Just so we're on the same page, remember that assigning is the act of associating some data on the right-hand side with a name of a variable on the left-hand side, and we use the assignment operator to do this. If you look at the code we've written so far, there's some irregularity to it. We said var at the top and then var at the bottom, but we're using this variable on every line over here, here, and here, and if we type out number. So when do we use this keyword var and when don't we? The keyword var is only used to create a brand new variable. So we're creating a brand new box entirely. We use var to create str. After that, we've either used that name to display or evaluate what's inside str, or we use the name to change what's in str. Or in programmer speak, we assigned a new string to the same variable. Similarly, we created a brand new variable, number, to hold the number 10. If I wanted to assign 20 to the number, remember I don't need to use var again. I'll simply say number, because this already exists, equal 20. So far, so good? I'll reiterate. We use the keyword var every time we want to create an entirely new variable. Okay, let's look at one more concept. Unlike boxes in the real world, once you assign a value or data to a variable, it forever can only hold that type of data. For example, if I'm packing up my bedroom and I put my clothes in one box, there's nothing preventing me from taking those clothes out and putting some other type of stuff in, like books or shoes. If we go back to our first variable, str, let's try and change that. So I'll use this line here, line number 7 for me, and I'll try to assign a number to str instead. The second you do this, you will get an error, which is what all this gibberish down here is, but more clearly indicated by the red stop sign on the left-hand side, or the red alert sign. You can try the same thing. You can try assigning a string to the number variable, and you'll get the same error. When an error appears in the gutter, so let's get that back again by assigning a number here. When an error appears, you can click on it to read more about it. So our error says that we cannot assign a value of type int to type string. When we declared the variable str and assigned a string to it, we were saying that forever, this variable can only hold strings. I'll explain the reasoning behind this later as we learn more about types, because this is not something universal that applies to all programming languages. For now, just know that if a variable holds a string to begin with, it can always only hold a string. Here's another programming term for you to remember. The error we just encountered was called a compiler error. When you read some text, as you go over each word, your brain understands the meaning of each word, its context and connection to other words to form a sentence. Similarly, a compiler is the brains behind Swift. It looks at each word that we write in our programs, and if we do something wrong, it raises an error, much like your brain would make you stop if you saw a spelling error. All right, let's take a break here. We've learned a fair bit of new information, and we're going to put it into practice. Right after this video ends, you will have the chance to take a code challenge. There will be some simple instructions, and when you write your code and hit run, we'll tell you if you got it right or wrong. Don't worry, there will be hints to help you along the way. Most students find it a lot easier to follow the instructions and write code in the Xcode playground and paste their results into the browser to check. Don't worry, that's perfectly okay, and in fact, I highly encourage it. Xcode is the tool you will eventually be using to write all your code, and the sooner you get familiar with using it and writing code, the better you will get. Before you tackle the challenge, however, a quick recap. Swift uses a set of reserved keywords to define structure in our programs. The first reserved keyword we learned about is var. Var is used to declare a variable. A variable is a container for data, and the reason we call it a variable is because the container can hold different values. A value is a simple data point, like text or a number. Every variable we create must be given a name. We then use this name to refer to data inside the container. Let's try and use another analogy. Let's say I have a journal called My Journal. Inside this journal, I write an entry every day. We can think of this in the same way we think of a variable. The name of the journal is My Journal. The value I'm assigning to the variable is the text I write in it every day. Since I can modify the text, the container is a variable. If the journal is sitting on my desk and I ask a friend to give it to me, I don't say, "Give me my," and then proceed to read out the contents of the journal. Instead, I can use the name My Journal to refer to the data that's stored inside. So when you hear me say, declare a variable named day and assign a string describing the day of the week to it, we type out something like this. We start with the keyword var, we type out the name, which is day in this case, an equal sign, and then assign a string.